So when you grow in your business, you grow in your expectations of life, you leveling up. You got to level up here too. Stop looking at the so-called things that society tells us is bad. Why do you act a fool? Ask them to ask you what happened to you. When you want to grow, you elevate your kids. And as entrepreneurs, you got to teach your kids. I mean, I was good. I made sure my kids had crafts, they had team sports, they had healthy friendships, they had extracurricular activities. But even that is not enough for this global world that we're living in. It's no walls anymore between country to country. Like Vernessa said, we are in a worldwide web. There are no borders. So we have to do better. We have to, as entrepreneur, business owners, teach our kids the things that are going to allow them to continue on this train ride of life. The schools, for 1,000 reasons, either they're unfunded, they don't have the right teachers that can help our kids. We got to educate them outside of just the school. We got to educate them in life. But here's the thing. As we find ourselves faced with all of these new opportunities for ourselves and our kids, we got to re-examine our own lives. What do we need to do? What changes do we have to make? What curses do we have to get rid of? And what new normals do we need to create? I read a book by Oprah, and it was called What Happened to Me? And I've really been digging deep into that book as I coach. People ask you all the time, what happened to you? Why do you behave the way you behave? The question should be, what happened to you? You see, being born in a family of 14, it was hell. There were limited resources. I mean, we had nothing. Listen, when food stamps were introduced, we had a party, okay? This was the first time that we could have what I would consider a nutritional meal. Before, it might have been neck bones and potatoes. You're trying to feed 13 kids. You didn't have the resources for healthy food. My stepdad, he did day work. If they didn't like his attitude, he didn't get called back. So a lot of things that we grew up with, we have to forgive our parents, because I had to forgive my mom. She did the best she could in life. But I didn't want that life. And if you don't want that life, you don't even have to know what to do. You just have to know, if I do this, I'm gonna get that. And that's how I got to become whole. If my mama did this, I'm like, let me get over here. But that ain't gonna be my future. So what do we need in order to continue to grow? What other things do we need to shed? What do we have to take on so that we can usher our kids into this global world? So as I'm reading the book, I realized so many of us come from a trauma-based world. And it wasn't called trauma. It was simply, this is how we do things. Now, does anybody in this room not know Oprah? Oprah, who is a billionaire philanthropist, she had a lot of trauma in her life. We can get over trauma, but we need to re-examine why we do what we do. How many of you have taken on those same habits that our parents took on? that we cried like a baby when it happened to us, especially the whippings. But so many of us, that's all we know. That's all we do until we find that there's something else. In this book called What Happened to You, it made me reflect on my own life and with my mom. I was my mother's fourth daughter. She would go on to have 11, as well as 3 boys. And my mom, she shared this story, especially now that I had got successful. You know, Vernessa, I was so worried about you. You were like the first of my kids that talked and walked and got off a bottle before you were one. You were my special child. And it caused a lot of envy with my other sisters. But she said when Kay Francis, who is her fourth daughter, came about, I was 1 year and 22 days old. My sister above me was less than a year old, 90 days. We were 9 days apart from being a year. And all of a sudden, I couldn't babble no more. All of a sudden, I wanted a bottle and started sucking my thumb, she said. I stopped walking. And my mom said, I don't know what was wrong with you. The question she should have asked was, what happened to you? You had another baby. Your hands were full. Can anybody understand that? That trauma can be from lack of attention. It doesn't necessarily have to be abuse. My needs were not met. And many of us, we have unmet needs. You don't even know it. But once you start reflecting and you get that off of you, I promise you, you're going to excel in ways that you think you're doing great. You're doing nothing compared to that. When we can self-assess. If I had told my mom that I was mad and I was regressing because she had too many kids, she would have probably knocked all of my big girl teeth out. But I held on to that. And when we hold on to this trauma, we find a workaround, but we're really not healed. We really have to look at that thing and say, okay, I can't hate my mom or be bitter, but what she did was follow her own brokenness. You see, my mother bled out when she was born, during her birth. My grandfather, he needed a wet nurse. Well, it was always another girl that likes whoever you're with. So he married this woman. And she treated my mother like crap. My mother never felt loved. How do you react to trauma? What do we do when we're unhappy? We act out. My mom's 14 kids was an answer to being alone and not loved. But because she was treated so poorly, she didn't know how to love. I don't think a lot of us do. Or we didn't in the beginning, because we mirror what we see. This book makes you look at your life differently, and it answers the question, what happened to me? Why do I behave like this? Being number 4, then here comes number 5, 6, 7, kids. Then I became one of the little mamas. You take these 3. All of this was trauma to me, but I couldn't express it. But I found myself in an unhealthy relationship, looking for love in all the wrong places. So I like this to be an open concept, and I like for some of us to just share what happened to you if you can understand the actions that came from it. Being neglected emotionally, my sisters, most of them don't see what I saw, but you touched on a wonderful point. Perception. I felt that there was a hole in me. So I became an overgiver. I would run myself into the ground for my family. I would cook 4-course meal before I go off to an afternoon or midnight shift to provide. When we look back at some things that affected us, some of the things we're doing, we need to change because we're acting from a place of pain or trauma. Oprah says at 3 years old, she was sent to the well to get some water. And the grandmother, she was 3. Go get a pail, get some water. But she caught Oprah, put her hand in the water, just to put it on her face. Just, she's a kid. She said she got a whipping that sent her to church with a white dress on at 3 years old. And she was bloody. The dress was bloody. And Grandma said, and you've heard parents say this, especially if you're from the South, I love you and I'm doing this for you. This for your good. They don't understand how it affects us. And when we hold it in, sometimes we don't even know we have unmet needs. So we get into these situations and they say, are you crazy? Or you fast? Or you this? But if they would know what happened to you, they would be more empathetic to you. And when we get to the point where we are comfortable self-assessing, I thought I was a good mother until I started self-assessing and actually realizing I needed therapy to get beneath some of this stuff that I was going through. And why was I flying off the handle? Why don't I trust anybody? Why am I afraid of dark buildings to walk into a building? There is so much trauma in our lives. And we adjust and adapt. But if we could open that box of darkness up, man, I tell you, you think you're doing something? You think you're a good person? You think you have a great relationship? It will be exponentially increased. And then you will break those generational curses that most of us have lived under. You will be a better parent. I was doing too much, overcompensating because I had no lack. My mom's view, I keep you safe. I mean, the low end, you think it's bad? The gangs were way worse in the 60s. The drugs, heroin was the drug. The stones were just becoming very powerful. I lived there on 43rd and Greenwood. So my mom, she kept us close. Be careful. I exposed my kids to the life that I grew up with so they would know. They wouldn't be so naive. My girls, I made sure they went to sex education with peers, not me talking, but a program where they talk frank, so they would be better informed. As this global, borderless world that we're living in, you have no idea what your kids are exposed to. Because the internet, and it's 24/7, they are never offline. We have to educate our kids, and some of it is sharing the news, some of it is sharing our story. I didn't always do that. I was ashamed that I got pregnant because back then there was no help for pregnant girls. I was a great student, graduated Dunbar, but you were ostracized. So we got to talk to our girls. We got to talk to our sons. We got to be honest, because I'm going to tell you something. Trauma can do a number on us. So when you grow in your business, you grow in your expectations of life, you leveling up. You got to level up here too. What was good enough when you were 16 or 25 or 45? Yesterday, that was yesterday. How do we keep growing so that our kids see that work that we put in? Stop looking at the so-called things that society tells us is bad. Why do you act a fool? Ask them to ask you, what happened to you? What happened to you that makes you do what you do? You will never not be from under that in a way because it shaped you, but it gives you pause and it gives you empathy. You ladies who have kids and you're not married to the father, or they divorce you and it was a harsh divorce, let me tell you, even if you don't believe it, at some point, they're full of regret too. They may not come to you because he has never said he was sorry, but I don't need it. You don't need it. What's the lesson you got out of that that's going to take you to the path that you want to be, in spite of what happens? We are still going to be on that track that the Creator has planned for us. He put us through this to humble us, to lean closer to Him on this journey to becoming whole. And that's what I do. I coach women and I use my book, because my book is not an autobiography. It's more. So many lessons learned that as a young woman trying to find out how to be a good mother, but I didn't have a pattern. She didn't have a pattern. So you have got to know, as you grow, and especially because of this global world, and it is borderless, it's totally borderless. We got to get better in our spirit and in our heart in order to keep having these positive interactions with our kids and showing them something more. Because pain, anger, malice, it takes a space in our heart and in our mind. And if it's filled with that, where's the goodness gonna fit in? They don't work together. She said it, it's two gate keys, good and evil. Let go of all of this stuff. And I tell you, I paid a dear price for not being honest. I'm talking years. It may have been 10. To lose your kid, your relationship, because part of it is we were taught we don't talk, don't tell, right? Then it was we bury shit under the rug because nobody wants to talk about the ugly. But you can't become whole until you rid yourself of that junk that's in your heart. It's holding us back, no matter where you are. Oprah, who's probably one of the richest women that didn't marry into money, self-made billionaire, getting that whipping at 3. She said, I am so much a people pleaser, it's disgusting. Overgiving is not healthy. It comes from really a place of pain that we think we got to be everything to everybody. We got to self-assess. We got to get therapy or coaching or get with the right people that are not going to be your girl, I would do that too. They're going to say, you need to stop with that. That ain't getting you nowhere. But we choose people for because they gonna agree. Find those that's gonna have a hard talk with you. We gotta start doing that, because once we do, the whole world will open up to you. We have so much more that the world has for us. So let's elevate. Let's get whatever we need to get to where we are. We must give ourselves self-love first. You're going to realize I ain't even have a roadmap or a pattern. So how do I do this? How do I elevate myself? Sometimes you can look at the things you came up with and you go, you know, I really didn't like that. Well, if that's that, then you do the opposite. And I got to where I am not because of what I knew. It wasn't the plan. It was, I got to where I'm at now because while I didn't know what I wanted, you damn well better know what you don't want. Okay? It's addition by subtraction. I don't know what I want, but I know I don't want no more of that. And if you do that in your mind, it's going to take you elsewhere. So you got to keep going, and you got to keep elevating and prepare your kids at some point to maybe take over your business if that's what they want. But more importantly, you're teaching them real skills. Because if you don't, and you decide to let that business go, all you got to do is look around. These people were giving their kids a fish every day. They die suddenly. The business is gone in a year because somebody done suckered them out of it because they don't understand the value of it. We got to use our hardships. We got to use our triumphs. We got to share those things with our kids even more than they did in my age because it's global. We were just hood. We shopped in a little area, not far from where we live. Now it's literally, you say it, someone said they've been shopping on Amazon for clothes. Who knows where that factory is? But we are living in a borderless country, and we got to raise up our kids to be competitors. Yes. Corporate America is not going to be the answer to the lifestyle they want. It's not for us. So as global warriors yourselves, give more time to making sure you drag your kids along with you, okay? And also, we gotta look at those things that no longer serve us so that we can elevate. Start journaling. Like I said, get a coach, get a counselor. It doesn't matter, but you gotta know what your limits are, what you're not gonna deal with, because a person will take you to a cliff and off the cliff if you don't know. Well, I'm not putting up with that. You'll be stronger, your business will be better because now you have clarity of mind. Your heart has been opened up because you've forgiven yourself. You understand why you do things you do, and you change those things that need changing. And the sky is the limit. That's all I got.